you know, evening meetings, especially this time of year, sometimes weekly, occasionally even more than, more than once a week. That's not all the time, but this time of year, sometimes it can be
Sure, I understand
a
that
little
things.
time consuming.
Yep, I understand that things pick up this time of year and that meetings are on Monday nights, a night that I'm available. So that's not a problem. Um, and as far as bookkeeping experience, I took accounting courses in college. I've dealt with different business decisions relating to developing parts of budgets, whether it's at the high school or in terms of building our department budget for the math department that I work in, or looking at some finance-related things for different law firms that I worked for.
Great. Glenn, any questions?
Who got you involved? Who got you to, how did you come our way on the finance committee?
Well, I saw that I was looking for different volunteer opportunities. I had seen that there was an opening back in November early, and then I'm involved in the West Newbury News Facebook page. There were some different discussions going on there and people suggesting, hey, get involved. I went back at that time and said, oh, well, to other people were saying, if you want to make a difference, get involved, and I want to do that. I've been involved in different things throughout my life. But never a finance committee. But I saw that, and I saw this opening was still present after a month, and I said, well, I guess it's time to apply.
Joe, anything else?
I think we've asked.
Okay.
All set? Okay.
Thanks so much.
We have a couple of people, so we're gonna talk. Sure.
Next individual is Mr. Wegwersen. Is he here? Mira, do you know if he knew? Okay.
Our name, please? We all look exactly alike, so you just don't want people to think that,
Well, everyone knows that Glenn Kemper is with us. They have a problem.
Glenn?
I need a pen.
Thank you. How do you cut? No. Sorry.
I think we have a little, I guess now, so I question if, I don't know how to pronounce his name, if he wants to be on, if we have him in. Yeah, I was gonna say, we have, we have an official opening, but we're probably gonna have another opening, it's in, 5 months. So I was gonna say, actually appoint both individuals, one as a member and one as an associate member, but now one didn't show up suddenly.
Well, I
I'd
would make a motion to appoint Mr. Kelly to the open position.
second.
Okay, I'm fine.
Discuss,
Now let's
And if,
discussion?
and if Mr., the other person
Wegwersen.
we
still
can
has
make him an
interest,
associate
he
member.
could be an associate member.
Okay, so can we find out exactly what this appointment means? You're filling a position,
Because someone, the reason we're talking about this, because somebody has resigned from their position, and they each have specific terms. So
that's the reason why. The person
somebody might be a year and a half, somebody might be 2.5 years, that kind of thing. That's what we're trying
They
to
all
figure.
end at the end of June, all appointments end at the end of June.
Not the FinCom.
No,
There's,
they all end at the end of June, but we have to make sure that
Okay.
we don't know what year it ends in. That's what.
oh, okay. Not what year,
I
right,
didn't
yeah.
get the last part of the sentence. Well, whose position are we filling? I just can't remember the person. We can just say it and then we can move on. And then we can.
Is this Nick's position that we're filling?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And he expires in 2019, so it's
2 years, basically
so
a year after this.
friendly amendment, term ending June 30th,
accept that friendly amount. That's, I mean,
Okay.
discussion. So you have to get sworn in. Being on the FinCom, you can't serve on any other committees.
Yes.
By being sworn in, you would talk to our town clerk, town council, who's Mike McCarron, who's right over there. And I think, obviously, Mary has all your information, and she will, Mary, can you forward his contact information to the FinCom, so then they can contact him, so they can get you in the mix of getting, you know, to meetings and getting the information.
I think they're actually meeting upstairs,
Sharpen your pencil.
I think they're meeting upstairs too.
if you're interested.
I mean, if you're a big college football fan, you might just say no because the game's on tonight, but.
My college hasn't been good at college football for a long time.
Sorry, Ed.
Holy Cross.
Ooh, back again, yeah. Okay, can you swear him in so we can go up and introduce him,
I will.
please?
Thank you for volunteering. That's great.
I mean, you don't feel obligated,
Wh-
you do what you want, but don't feel
Okay.
obligated that he has to stay the whole meeting.
Glenn, we haven't, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I know,
He's a big boy.
yeah.
Well, it's up to you, Archie, let's move this thing along.
I am. Our next item is the police department. Chief Reed, do we have a new officer? Or we do not, okay.
There's actually two things that we want to obviously keep the board abreast of, and I'm going to have Sergeant Cena kind of give the lowdown of both of the topics. The first one will be the accreditation process, and the second one is brief information about the hiring process for the full-time position.
Okay.
All right, the chief said,
Dan, you might even bring it in closer, yeah.
the chief indicated he sent you folks a memo, so you kind of got to read over what he sent over about the accreditation process and where
Okay.
we're at.
Absolutely not, I haven't seen
No?
it, it was just given to me tonight.
Okay. I'll break it down for you. Basically, within the past 5 or so years, our department's come leaps and bounds from where we were. We were certified under Chief Holmes. Chief Reed came in, we got recertified under Chief Reed. After we got certified back in May, I approached him and said, let's go ahead to the next step and higher level of policing, let's go to state accreditation. And just to break that down a little bit, out of 211 participating agencies in the Commonwealth, 18 of the 211 are certified. So we're one of the 18 that is certified in the Commonwealth. Out of the 211, 75 of those 211 are accredited. Neighboring communities, Amesbury, Newburyport, Rowley, Georgetown are among the accredited agencies. To become state certified, you need to reach 159 of the standards issued by the Mass Police Accreditation Commission. We've successfully done that for certification and for recertification. To up our level now to accreditation, they're asking a little bit more of us. We have to meet the 159 initial standards. We have to meet the 98 mandatory standards to be accepted for accreditation. And on top of that, we have to meet a 69 optional standards. So what that is there's the certification portion, there's the accreditation mandatory portion, and then there's the optional section, which we tailor to fit our department, how it functions, to hopefully obtain state accreditation, which I'm hoping to do by the end of February.
I'm not, just playing devil's advocate. So does the, how does the accreditation bump up? Do both of you feel that this improves it improves the performance as evaluated by an outside group of people, but do you feel being in the organization that improves the organization of the police department as you see it? Does that make any sense? Or, in other words, do you feel it's besides being a great thing for an outsider to look at the department, you feel it makes the department work better?
How does it benefit? Does it benefit the department? How does it benefit the town?
It benefits both. Once we get accredited, we're going to get a break from Maya on our insurance. And when you get accredited, that basically means that these are set standards that all the police departments around here are supposed to abide by. We'll be fortunate to be, I'm hoping, the 76 out of 211 that are accredited in this area. And what that is, it's basically, it focuses on how your police department functions with its day-to-day operations, policy development, rules and regulations. It covers a whole spectrum of how police department's supposed to function and conduct business. And it just makes us operate that much tighter so there's no second guessing. And if an incident comes up where there's, someone might not have dealt with an incident before, they can fall back to our policy manual, which has been looked over and reviewed by myself and the chief, as well as the other sergeant, and approved by the Mass Police Accreditation Commission to say that we're above board and where we should be at how we operate and conduct business.
Basically falls on national standards. So yes, we're doing best practices. We're doing best practices for the state and the Commonwealth, but obviously these are best practices that have come about nationally as well. So for a size of our agency, and with the small amount of agencies of our size that are doing that, that's a great feather in our hat, the sergeant's hat, and obviously the town for achieving this level of professionalism.
Would other, how would I say it? Other, another department would certainly look favorably on you guys the way for having done that. In other words, I don't know, Danvers or something. Would you get a better, not a response, but it has value is what I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, it bring value to the town, and obviously bring value to the police department, and maybe long term, hopefully it will help us recruit.
Okay, that's a good answer. Okay.
Because then too, I think on the recruiting aspect that, they know they're accredited, so there are certain standards they have to, abide by, and professionalism, so forth and so on. So I think that would help.
So that the recruiting there, something I hadn't thought of. That's a good point.
Or if there's a situation that happens with one of the police officers, that an individual then questions, we're an accredited department, and then we follow those accreditation procedures, that helps us if there was any question of wrongdoing or so forth and so on down the line. Also, I think that's the reason why we get a break on our insurance, because there are certain procedures that we would be following that limit any risk, future risk on
Working outside the box, yeah.
The sergeant and I are looking at it as that, yeah, we all can be average, but we're trying to do better than average policing. Well, obviously, Sergeant and I have very similar views on how police departments should be run, as well as, I would say, everybody else at the police department. But Sergeant Cena and I have, I guess, a closer vision of where we should be, where we want to be, and how we want to act. So it brings a positive light onto the town, and obviously a positive light onto the police department. And none of these standards were really give-me's. Every one of these standards was a tough nut to crack, and the sergeant and I believe that we can achieve this.
Well, commendable.
Thank you. Well, the sergeant and I will obviously keep you posted as the time marches forward. We will have what they call a mock assessment, where they'll come in and look over the books before the actual assessment team comes in. But once that happens, we'll obviously let the board know again when it's going to happen. And then once we obviously achieve that level, there'll be obviously another ceremony in months coming that obviously the board will be welcome to be a part of.
Okay, well, thank you very much, both of you.
I think the second thing, I know the board has a lot on the agenda tonight, is we just wanted to obviously apprise you of the hiring process, excuse me, of the last full-time person that we've been looking at.
Since we've been granted that position and we lost our first candidate, Chris McGuire went back to Newton, New Hampshire, it's been kind of an uphill battle for us to obtain qualified, certified police officers. There's an abundance of part-time police officers out in the field right now, but to get what we're gunning for is kind of a turnkey operation, a full-time qualified person. We've had a couple candidates come in. They've went through the oral boards. Unfortunately, we've caught some things in their background which have disqualified them from moving on in the process. So where we're at now is we have two potential candidates coming up on the 19th of January. One really strong potential candidate from Peabody is going to interview with us, who's full-time Academy certified. So the hopes is at that
Well,
point.
I'm sorry, Dan, has been to the
yeah,
academy?
Well, that's been
Yeah.
the bone of contention right now is we want a full-time certified officer just so they can hit the ground running, do our field training program, and get on the street where we need them. If all else fails and for some reason something comes up in the background of the candidate we select and the second candidate isn't viable as well, at that point, the chief and I have discussed deferring to opening it up to the part-time officers and advertising out to accept outside part-time applicants, and then we'll just have to go forward from there with sending some. There are two, but they have very limited experience at this point. Yeah. Both of them are under a calendar year of experience right now.
I'm sorry. The problem that Sergeant Cena and I and Sergeant Durant, the three of us that have been running this is our third interview process within so many months. It's been a real struggle. There's probably a lot of reasons why it's been a struggle. I think nationally it's a struggle, but in Massachusetts, there are a lot of larger departments that are seeking full-time officers as well. So we're fighting in a small pool with a lot of police departments that are looking for the same thing that we are.
Is there a demographic thing, like at the moment, a lot of people are retiring or anything like that, or just in the whole state, or no? I don't know, just asking.
Well, the state police are severely understaffed now, and obviously everybody knows in the news there's been some retirements that have come out of the woodwork or some issues. So the state's pulling academies, civil service, a lot of the towns, a lot of the people are aging out, so they're pulling people, and they're getting, civil service covers a lot broader area than what we do.
Plus, sorry. Go ahead, Glenn.
So, the two candidates that come in on the 19th, have you interviewed them all, or they're
No.
strong because of their resumes?
Strong because of the resumes. They're currently full-time certified.
Both.
Both. Those were the only two applicants that we received, which is pretty poor considering how many times we've had the advertisement out there. So we're hoping for the best that we'll be able to pick one of the two people in coming weeks. Like I said, the sergeant said the 19th is the interview process, and then we start the background, and hopefully everything, the hiring gods all fall on our favor during this time.
Will they go through the same process, the oral boards
Yep.
and so forth
Everything.
and so on, and then?
Everything's the same. So, but again, if that doesn't work, then our
I
other
think it's terrific that they're certified, but I would, if they don't fit, they don't fit. You know what I mean?
Well-
It does save the town a lot of money in the department, a lot of headaches by having somebody totally certified coming in, because we don't have to pay them to go to the academy, and then we don't lose them, but we're still paying them while they're going to the academy. But if they don't fit, they don't fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
we want them to be, to Glenn's point, just because they're certified, it should be, we want a good fit. We want them to be good, yeah.
I mean, the other
Yeah.
example, I mean, all the civil service tests have come out, all the lists have come out, and I'll even give you an example. Everett is hiring 30. So how can we compete against Everett when they're looking at 30 and we're looking
Well,
at
we
1?
have better weather than they do, so that's,
We do?
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Anything else from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next item is information about a proposed solar project on Coffin Street.
Hey, Mary, is the person coming in to the assessor's office? Is the assessors coming in or not? Okay. Yeah, okay, good.
It's gonna take just a second to set up this. I'm gonna want to get my screen running for a time.
You want to handle something else when he's doing it? You want to do the recycling thing?
Yes, why don't you do the recycling?
So, we had talked about that. I had talked to Paul Savigny about what we can do more or what we can't for the recycling aspect of it. He said, if we have some specific questions, please pass them along to him about them. and then he will present them to Mello, and then Mello and he will come, then he will present them to the board, and then Mello, and then if they will answer them, and if the board, being us, if we want them to come in to explain and to further go about questions, they'd be more than welcome to do it.
I would say this also for the public. If people have any questions about recycling, you know,
What's about, how we can make it better.
how can we make it better, things that you want to know if are acceptable, you know, all those kinds of things. How can we improve it? Send them along to the board, and we will
We'll
forward.
finalize it next meeting?
Or
Send it on? Is that okay?
fine, yeah,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
yes.
On this assessor temporary help, she's the same lady that was here last year, so she's familiar with the operations.
Make
We
a-
moved to appoint Crystal Hall as the temporary assessor's clerk at an hourly rate of $22 an hour.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. I would also just a very quick, I just a sort of FYI kind of announcement. There was a report that from Mr. Lebrecq, the finance director of the Pentucket District, that special education costs for the next fiscal year may go up for the district perhaps as much as $1 million. And just so that we're in the budgeting process now, so that's certainly going to affect the town. And in addition to our regular assessment and a regular, you know, increase, there could perhaps be an additional $250,000 assessment to the town just on that one new item.
This is,
The gap for special education is $1 million, but he said that in terms of his total budget, it's a $646,000 spending gap. So I guess he closed part of it somehow. I'm not sure. I also would say I think that we currently have budgeted a 5% increase for Pentucket, which is significantly more than we paid. So not that it's not covered, but I don't think it's not as bad necessarily.
Okay.
is there a way we can start a conversation with our state, being Lenny Mayer and Bruce Tarr, that the cities and towns taking the burden about special education is really tough. And a lot of these costs that are borne by us, like for 24-hour care and so forth, that I think basically Mass Health should be paying for. I think we need to maybe make them aware of, and this has been something that the school department has been talked about also. Because I'll give you a scenario. So we set our budget, we go on, a special ed family moves into town, they have every right to, and their cost for that one child turns out to be $300,000. We have to pay that, and they move in December. And then, so that means we have to cut teachers, we have to do everything we possibly can to be able to work within that budget, or come back to the towns for more money, I guess, I don't know. So I think on a larger scale, I think we need to, as a state, need to rethink how we fund special education.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you saw the email today, but Triton has begun to take the lead on that. They actually have a regional forum on school finance that's on Thursday, January 25th at 6:30 at the Triton High School auditorium to address that issue. And I think they've invited the local representatives from the surrounding North Shore communities.
If you could find more information about that, I'd like to attend that. Okay, I just haven't checked my email since this morning, my town email since this morning. But I don't know, do we have to sign up? They're just inviting us, we show up?
They're just inviting us. Making us aware.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
They're going to have, just so you know, Suzanne, Bob, Bruce, Tor, Kathleen O'Connor, Ryan Brad, Bill, Lenny Merritt, James Bill, Portia, all attend.
Okay, could you introduce yourself and so forth?
Could we, you want to relocate? So can I start, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Before I forget, because I forgot to bring a pad of paper up there. And then I would ask if anybody in the audience had questions, we could get those at the end. Mike, we have to vote, we could end this by not voting on it and bringing it to the planning board, is that true or false?
Yeah, why is this?
If we feel like if we feel at this particular time, this is a very hypothetical situation, I just want to know what our authority is here. If we feel that we do not want to pass this along to the planning board for their review in open meeting, does it end until we do?
No.
Then why?
What was it? Because this is the way the process under 48 Section 5 is that you submit basically there are certain individuals. Well, there are two aspects. First is any person can propose a zoning amendment, so that you can do it, and that's up to the board whether or not they want to pass that along and start the process. So, however, there are certain parties which have a right to request a zoning change, and they include the owner of a property, a certain percentage of people within the zoning district, the selectmen themselves, the planning board, and some other ones that are listed at 10 taxpayers can come to it. So, and in those cases, you would have to pass it along. You see the difference? Is that certain people?
None of those exist at this point.
Exactly.
So this particular for-profit company is asking us to get the ball rolling on changing a bylaw and increasing our solar overlay district to include 20 acres on thereabouts on Copper Street.
To basically to create a new overlay. It's essentially just to input.
So we could table this tonight, nothing happens. We could pass it along.
Or if the landowner sent in a request.
No, I'm talking about tonight.
Tonight.
Tonight. Our authority right now is tonight. The reason why they're doing this is because all those other options are not taking place. Those other options could take place.
Exactly.
But I just want to know what our responsibility is. Our responsibility tonight is to pass it along to the planning board.
Right.
Say, don't vote yes or no on it. Say maybe I want to table it and get a little bit more information, so then I could pass it along. But within that time frame, the landowner or whomever else could circumvent the board of selectmen, and then
then you just have to pass it along.
then it would come to us as a formality. Then we would have to pass it along to get all the balls rolling in public hearings with the planning board.
Right.
Okay. Now, who holds the conservation restriction?
The town would own that. Well, whatever. I mean, there are two entities that can hold the conservation restriction. The town obviously is one of them. A private organization could be another. The town acting through its conservation commission could. Each one of them are legally empowered to hold the conservation restriction.
And under this case, if it comes to the board of selectmen, who gets to decide who holds that?
It's again.
No, but you understand? So then, even though they're doing it this way and they're requesting the overlay district in part, so we're only really voting on the overlay district. So they're asking us to do that with a conservation restriction on the remaining land. Then will the homeowner then say, okay, now that I have my overlay district on the 20 acres, I'm going to give the conservation restriction to the Concom. I'm going to give it to Greenbelt, or because it's coming through us, does the Board of Selectmen have it? You know what I'm trying to say on that?
Yeah.
I want to know what's going to happen on that land. Because conservation restriction is a nice word to say, but there's a lot of levels of conservation restrictions. You know what I mean? Passive use, you can have horses there but not motorcycles, or you could maybe have you could put a ball field maybe there in the future if you felt like it. So that word means a lot of things, and I want to try to, before I try to vote on something, I want to make sure I understand what all the ramifications are of that neighborhood.
Okay, so what the process you'd probably want to use is a thing called contract zoning, where essentially is that you would set up all these issues before you vote at town meeting. And there'd be an obligation on the part of the landowner and the person exercising it, that if it was approved at town meeting, that these things would fall in place. So you would already have the conservation restriction written out as to what it would be.
Yeah, but I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But who gets to say what that conservation restriction does? So when it leaves here tonight, if it goes past and we say yes to it, now do we get to say what that conservation?
You have, there's.
That's what I'm trying, you know you know what I'm getting at and what's happened in the past. And there's conservation restrictions around town, some of them are different than this, some of them we have no control over, some of them that the Concom does, some of them that we've given to Greenbelt. So if I'm gonna vote on something and if I'm gonna do it, I want the Board of Selectmen to say what's going on there. That's, I'm
Right.
gonna get to the bottom line. I want the Board of Selectmen to say that. I don't wanna, then after tonight, then the planning board gets it and for review, and then during that public hearing, they get to decide what it's gonna be. And then
Well, no, the
Concom-
planning board can only give recommendations.
Okay, so it's us.
It's,
Or the
it's,
landowner could, or the landowner at the end.
the
could
landowner,
say-
no, the landowner could, whatever is offered as part of the contract. So basically is that you would be negotiating with the landowner to have a contract written in a specific way, so that the Board of Selectmen, the Conservation Commission, whomever,
But we have control over that. That's what
It
I'm trying
would-
to get at.
it was, there'd be an offer. I mean, essentially
Okay,
is you
so
could go and say,
They offered to us.
and essentially is that what could happen is that they could offer a contract, and they could offer contract A and contract B.
Mhm.
And if they propose contract B, which says the conservation is doing it, that it goes to the town meeting and it's voted there. You see what my point is?
I understand.
So what,
So wherever they think.
So if you- if-
wherever they
if-
think, wherever they think they can get the most juice for
Well, not
approval,
necess-
they'll
yeah.
probably give that particular board the right to write the conservation restriction.
well, no,
And we
because,
can realize-
but in some ways, it should be a cooperative effort. It should be something that's written
Yeah, I
and
know.
part of it and presented to town meeting. I
Well, of
mean, they
course
would
it
have
would.
it in front. They would know,
Right.
it's not a pig in a poke. They
Okay,
would have to
okay,
know what it is.
I understand, I don't mean to belabor
Yeah.
that. Okay, question for you. Now, you say there's a lot of maybes and this and that, and we're gonna work with the town.
Yeah.
So will all those, you seem to have a pretty quick timetable that you're gonna be coming to this Springtown meeting with this. So will this, because it sounds really good that when you say, hey, we wanna, create an overlay district, and we wanna make something totally different in a neighborhood that's never been there before, right? But there's a potential that the town, people could buy electricity at a cheaper rate. I think you could just say that and it could never happen, and then people could say, wow, this is a really good idea because of that, and that because of that never happens. You know what I mean by that? So I would like to have all the potential things worked out before we start making decisions on things, because that's a big thing. Some people say, I don't want that, but then they say, oh my word, our rates are gonna be decreased by 20% because of this. That is such an asset that we're saving renewable gas, all that kind of, we're using renewable energy, plus we're gonna save 20% on our monthly bills. You get what I'm saying?
I think.
It sounds great when you're doing your presentation, but I wanna know what really is gonna happen.
Yeah, well, the community solar thing that you described, where neighbors and people in the town could buy electricity from this project, that's an existing program that is already, you can right now today call a number of different companies, and you can buy electricity from another solar farm somewhere in Massachusetts. So that is an existing program. The rules are changing a little bit as the state rolls out the SMART program. They're actually just rolling it out this year. So, yeah, we're tracking it, and these are, this likely will be an option for the project, but it's not what we're hinging our vote on. I think.
No, I'm not, but it's a whole
Package.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a package, so every little thing means something, and you take something away, package still looks good, but it doesn't look as good, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And
Okay,
that's,
so I talk a lot, so I wanna we have a lot of stuff, so I wanna get through it. I'm sorry, you answered it correctly, you really don't know. Okay, so I got that. So fencing and trees and stuff like that. Again, it was potential. These are what potentially we could use in the neighborhood. We're gonna talk to the neighbors. That's a big deal to the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Which ones we use and what we don't.
Yeah.
So you put up there absolutely gorgeous trees. And I would wanna know what the fencing would, what the maintenance of those trees are, if they all die, and all that kind of stuff, and who's gonna take care of them, and so forth and so on. That would have to be part of the package, and exactly what things are gonna be, as in the fence, as in the screening stuff, and so forth and so on. What about, now, it's all built, everybody's happy, everybody feels good about themselves that we're not burning coal. How much usage is that going to get? How much traffic in that neighborhood will this solar farm create on a daily basis, if any? I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's a good question. It won't create any traffic, is the answer. We'll have to go in there.
It will create some traffic. I would hope that somebody's going to monitor it and somebody's going to maintenance it and some requirements, I would think. I don't know anything about it. So it's going to have some, but it's going to be minimal.
Yeah, twice a summer, we'll come out there and mow the grass and make sure everything is running smoothly. All of our O&M is tracked remotely, so we've got our office, and we basically manage a fleet of wind turbines and solar farms from our headquarters in Austria and North America as well. So a lot of that's done remotely, digitally. So even in the winter, we don't come and clear the panels. We don't even have to plow the driveway. There's very little maintenance. So you go out there and they basically just sit and produce power.
What happens if a hurricane comes and they all blow away?
Well,
there's an emergency number that somebody would call, or whatever. I mean, that kind of stuff works out, right?
For sure. Well, we would see it. Our monitoring system would catch it, and we would get the site. That's
minimal. That's just minimal, but
there's the occasional emergency response or something like that. But other than that, there's no trouble.
That's it for me for right now.
Okay. I'd like to tell me a little bit about the company. How many of these facilities are online that are managed now? What's the finance? I don't know anything about this company, and I'd like to know that it's going to be there 8 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have currently about 450 megawatts of operating projects around the world. Most of that is in Europe. We've got 40 megawatts operating in Canada, 10 megawatts
Can you
in
tell us what that means?
I'm about to, absolutely.
Okay.
So that translates to, I'm trying to think of how many project sites that would be. We've got about
Well, how many megawatts would this thing be?
This would be 4 megawatts.
4 megawatts, and how many do you have?
450. I think 470 we installed by the end.
So they have 45 in North America and 45 in Europe. Roughly. 10 times, no, we have
Well, we have 40 in Canada, 10. So we've got a large wind farm in Maine, 10 megawatts. We've got a number of projects in development here. They're not operating, so I wouldn't count those in Massachusetts. In Canada, we've got 20 operating projects. And in Europe, a number of projects I couldn't tell you, but it's around 50 megawatts installed.
Is this a publicly traded company? Is it on a German stock exchange or something? Yes.
German stock exchange.
Okay.
You can buy shares if you like.
Okay.
Conflict of interest.
What's that?
Conflict of interest.
How's that?
We're voting on it.
Another question. So, I tried to read all the Massachusetts regulations related to this morning, but I didn't completely get it. So, if the overlay district was not instituted, it seemed to me that this would be classified as a large facility, not a small or a medium facility from reading by the Mass regs, but that other than the setbacks and the height and the certain factors like that, that even sort of you could call it like an unfriendly amendment. It seemed like you could still do this even without the overlay district, that there would be a site plan review, but that it still could not be prevented. Is that correct or not?
Just gave them an idea.
Yeah.
No, I'm just,
No,
I want to know the whole situation.
what was it? Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 9 gives language that seems to have permissible of, solar energy by right. Okay?
That's what I got out of it, yeah.
But people have interpreted that as to apply to as accessory to a building or a home, as opposed to a farm, an ongoing facility. The language is vague. I mean, that that argument that you're having is out there. Someone may make that one day.
They haven't yet.
But I'm not aware of it. But our interpretation of it has been that protection is something that is accessory to an established business or home. So the idea is that if you have a homeowner, the town can't prevent you from putting solar on. A town could, the idea is that some people would say, well, in our town, we don't want to have that because we don't think it's aesthetically pleasing, so we're going to outlaw them. And they wanted to prevent towns from doing that by way of zoning.
And they couldn't do it, you can't. Yeah, if I had an existing business and I wanted my roof, you couldn't do that by putting a bylaw. Okay.
That's how it's been interpreted, but subject to change. But
Can I piggyback on that real quick? You mentioned, there was another one. You mentioned, hopefully, or it'll be there for 20 years. Then I guess it serves its useful life. Probably, you'll have, there'll be better technology and so forth and so on. So what do you do with it after 20 years?
No, that's a great question. So the power purchase agreement that we'll have with National Grid will be for 20 years. So that's how our financials are based on 20 years.
You amortize it over 20 years or whatever.
Exactly. But in practice, the racking system is generally designed for about 30 years. The modules are swapped out periodically, over time, and even in 10 years, we'll have higher efficiency modules. So we can, talk to National Grid, maybe you can swap out some of what we have for some better ones as the technology progresses. But once we have a solar overlay district, that could remain a solar facility forever until that zoning is changed, or until it doesn't make sense to do solar anymore. So the idea would be that this wouldn't just, at the end of 20 years, we could either scrap the project, sell scrap metal, and say goodbye, or re-up the project, get a new contract with National Grid, and keep an active solar operation at the site. So, yeah, those are the two options.
And because we made it a solar overlay district, the only thing they can do there is solar, unless they change it again.
no, because the underlying zoning is still in effect.
So then they could sell it then as residential.
Except for the land subject to conservation.
Of course. We're only talking about 20. So they can do it for 20 years, scrap the metal, take it all down, clear it, and then put a subdivision in. Under zoning laws in West Newbury, or whatever you could do, With, I don't even know.
But only on the 22 acres.
I understand. I just want to know the whole picture.
I think these are great questions. It seems like one of the things you're getting at is how can, and actually this is a good conversation we've been having with these folks, is how can we craft an article to be voted on that will bind us to do exactly as we have stated here. And one of the things that we are keen to do is once we pass through you guys, we go to the planning board. Planning board will get the nuts and bolts taken care of, what those trees are, what exactly that fence will be. And a lot of that will be written into the article that will be voted on. So we can be held to a certain.
You will be.
Yeah,
Okay, what is the sequencing of, do you, what if National Grid doesn't want to sign a contract with you, and is that a possibility?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's still a lot of speed bumps before this project will become a reality. So, say we get a zoning change, you still have to effectively get a yes from National Grid that yes we can interconnect, and the cost of doing so would not be prohibitively expensive. There's also a potential solar import tariff coming from our friends in Washington, D.C. that might increase the cost of incoming solar into the U.S. by roughly 30%, which would make a lot of these projects very, very economically difficult. Not necessarily impossible, but it would be a real challenge for projects like this to carry out. So other than the zoning change, there's still a lot of hurdles to jump before this project would actually become a reality. We've talked to Concom, we've also presented to the planning board. They've also they have input as we go to site plan review. Wetlands, it's a pretty wet site, as we saw.
The Concom said it's a very wet. There's one individual on there that told me that it's a very wet site.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's one of the bigger challenges here in terms of actually building this thing is accounting for the wetlands. So yeah, we apologize for not having spoken to you guys yet until now.
That's fine.
To a lot of the other groups.
So I can say with certainty that you're going to take 92 acres or 72?
72.
It's 72, so I'm not adding it. Okay, you're going to take 72 acres, take the best 20 acres of that 72 acres, and then just give us a bunch of swamp that we can use as a conservation restriction. That we can't use. Now, I mean, it is what it is. You know, a lot of times in my head, the first initial thought would be say, well, 20 acres. Now we have 52 acres of passive recreation. That is absolutely wonderful to town. You know what I mean? But is it really 52 acres of passive recreation? Or you're giving us a conservation restriction on a bunch of wet land that the Concom won't let the town use?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's hard to see this, but most of the land in the area that we want to build in is wet. The southern parts of the property, I'm going to try to get the map that's a little more visible here, is dry, but it's steep. So in the southern region,
I've been up there.
Yeah. So the wettest parts are actually right around.
Rick, could you get the line?
We're kind of squeezed into these fields. But if you look at a map of the entire property, I'll use the mouse here. The wetlands.
I can see.
The wetlands are basically up here in this area. There's some wetlands in the easement, in the transmission easement. And there's a wetland here around this pond, as well as wetlands. But this entire southern part is pretty dry. There's a steep area here which we can't build solar on. This area is wooded. It's undulating. It faces east. It's not right for solar, but it is right for a trail. It is right for recreational areas, and yeah. So yeah, that's a good question you have. The swampy area is actually the closest to where we want to build.
And you're going to bring, when you say one phase, I thought you needed 3 phases. You're going to take 3 phases from there and bring it up to Main Street?
Yeah.
You need 3 phases for that, and there's not 3 phases on Cochran Street.
Nope, we can upgrade the lines going up the street. So the poles are in pretty good condition. What National Grid will do is if there's an older, decrepit pole, they'll pull out the pole and put in a fresh new one with a 3-phase line, the T-bar on top. Most of the lines are in pretty good condition on Coffin Street. So what they'll likely do is just add that crossbeam to a number of poles along Coffin up to number 28. So the other option that we're talking to National Grid about is potentially connecting right into this transmission corridor. There's actually a small 3-phase line on the western end of the western side of the corridor. If they'll let us do an underground cable underneath to that, that's preferable. So, but that's up to Grid whether that's actually.
Yeah, because that's a lot shorter length of. Running 3 phases is a lot of money.
Yeah, it is, and that interconnection, there's still a lot of hurdles here, for sure.
So if everything goes and you get an article, when do you see breaking ground? Every single, there's not, all the hurdles are met and speed bumps are gone over without going any tire.
Yeah. So April 30th is town vote. Going up to that, we've got a bunch of stuff to do. April 30th, we get a positive vote. Then we go, I believe, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, we go into site plan review. We'll have to get our more detailed drawings done, get approved by the planning board formally at that point. Once we have that, We will probably still be waiting for any interconnection, yes or no, from National Grid. They can take roughly 6 months to get back to you sometimes. So we started talking to them. We expect summerish is when we would hear.
That you would get an answer from them saying that, yes, we do want to connect, and yes, we're going to give you a 20-year contract to buy electricity from them.
Well, almost. So first we would get the yes that we can plug into the grid and sell power at some rate with National
To
Grid.
whomever.
Well, to National Grid in that case.
Okay.
But if we can plug in, then we can also do a community solar option as well. That's residences and businesses. Also, it's called an interconnection services agreement. They take a lot of the same things that you guys want: site plan. They need the electrical plan. That's the bigger part for them. Once we get the municipal permitting, thumbs up. Once we get the interconnection agreement, thumbs up. Then we apply to the state to enter the SMART program. And that will give us the real ability to actually build a project under the auspices of this new regulatory scheme. So that would mean, sorry, to answer your question, that would mean we could probably break ground in the fall, late fall at best. Most likely it would be 2019 build.
Any more questions from you guys?
Joe, any questions?
Sorry, I'll wake you up. One more. So other than me feeling good when I go to bed at night, that we're not burning coal down in West Virginia, what benefits this town? To putting a solar field in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah. So we would avoid
I have
the
to. I mean,
neighborhood.
you
No,
know,
that's a
you-
good.
I
That's
mean,
it. Absolutely.
It's reality. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what you do. We're still putting a for-profit solar farm in a neighborhood. Other than feeling good about using renewable energy, that is a big part of it. But what about benefits to town?
Sure. So one of the main benefits would be the pilot payment, which we still have to work out with the assessor's office. So I don't want to throw out exact figures, but it's usually paid on a per megawatt basis. It's basically a fairly strong annual payment to the town for hosting the project. Now, typically, infrastructure and equipment is taxed at whatever rate that equipment is classified.
Yeah.
Now, the rules are a bit more vague around solar and around renewable energy, which is why a lot of towns in North America have gone for pilot agreements. It's a payment in lieu of tax, and it just goes. It's almost a tax equivalent payment. You don't have to deal with depreciation annually. It's just a fixed annual payment from the project to the town.
Yeah, we do that now, correct? Okay, so there is some revenue towards the town.
Yep. There's also the conservation restriction would allow that site to be used, recreationally and keep it green. In terms of fitting into the character of the neighborhood, we think this is one of the stronger cases for that. We're not residences, but we are literally not changing much of the site. Out of 72 acres, we want to build, the conservation, the overlay district is 20 acres. But the project area is only about 14-point-something acres, maybe 15 at most. So we're not consuming much of that 72 acres. And for that small land use, you get 50-something acres worth of conservation lands purchased by our company and allowed to offer trail connectivity and green space for the community.
Well, what do we get, Mike, from the pilot program now? I know that field is going to be a lot smaller than this one. We paid them. Oh.
We get about $5,600 in a pilot program for 450, 490 kilowatts. So if this were a 4 megawatt project, that would be approximately 8 times larger.
So potentially, if we use that same type of thing, 8 times 5, again, I don't have to use my fingers, it's potentially around the ball. The people are going to want to know around $40,000 if we're using the same thing.
As one example.
That's one example. Yeah, we have to have some examples so we understand what this is going to affect. I mean, we have to start somewhere, don't we?
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, just so we have the scope, it's not going to be $5,000 annually. It's not going to be 10. And I mean, yeah, so it has to be something. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would ask if, at this point, because I would like to hear from any of the residents.
Exactly.
Anything that we haven't talked about, or any concerns, preferably some real concerns, other than not having, you can say, the first person who says we don't want it in the neighborhood kind of covers everybody who doesn't want it in the neighborhood, I would think. But I would really like some good specific things that, you know what I mean, other than not wanting it next to my house.
Yes?
You need
Use the mic, please.
I'm pretty loud, but I'll come up here.
No, it's for home, it's not for us.
Jean Lambert, am I too close? Okay. I am a resident of River Road, not in a butter, but also a member, long time, of the Open Space Committee. And this solar installation, this laying of an industrial site in the middle of a residential neighborhood, goes against all the surveys we've done for the last, I don't know how many years, on open space that value the rural character of this town as the preeminent value. And this would obliterate that in that area because of the industrial nature of the project and because of the clear cutting of the 20 acres. Thank you.
Steve Cutter, 44 Coffin Street. My wife and I moved in about 6 years ago, took a house that was dilapidated, put a lot of time and effort to rebuild it. I think you know which house it is going down on the left-hand side. This whole project sits right on the hill, right above our house. The whole length of the property keeps on going. Every time I see a drawing, the drawing's changed. Tonight I see where the fence line has been moved back, but now they say the overlay is 50 feet outside of that. That's more clear cutting of trees back towards the property lines. The inverter hole system is sitting behind our house. He didn't show the water runoff plan where they're building all these swales where it's going to direct all the runoff from this property to one end of our property up on the hill where they plan on building a pond, which the overflow is going to come right down into our property. And then we heard that one potential is to run the power lines right down a 10-foot right-of-way that runs at the end of our property up onto the property down to Coffin Street. We moved into that area because it's a residential rural area. That's what we liked about it. And what they're doing now, what the proposal is, to put a commercial power plant basically right in our backyard. And we're not in favor of it. Thank you.
Can I just respond to just quickly?
First of all, I'm only one person up here. I don't want to get it back and forth. You know what I mean by that? But if that won't serve anybody any good tonight. But if you have something that you might want to clarify for us or something like that, that would be good. But I'm not going to put up with, as one member, is going back and forth. You know what I mean? On either side. I don't want them to go at you. You know what I mean? So I like to have some information.
Definitely. Yeah, I just want to clarify. I think we've had actually a pretty good relationship. You know, I know some of you guys are against the project, and for my job, I have to be for it. So, but I just do want to make sure we are all talking about the same thing. So we would not clear cut the full 20 acres of the overlay district. The 50-foot buffer is only it's a buffer on paper. So we would have to cut trees within a fenced area. But that 50 feet outside of the fenced area, there's no reason for us to cut that anything like that.
There's no reason to cut it, and it won't be cut.
It won't be cut.
You know what I mean by that?
Does it, what about taller trees blocking the sunlight onto the panels?
In those 50 feet buffers.
Yeah, well, only in the south do we have that, and you know we've accounted for that. You can see where the fence is. The fence goes out into a larger swath south of the project area. To the north and east of the project area, there's not much sun coming from those directions. Those trees will not be cut. And to the west of the project area, we have power lines where there's already a swath of trees cut, so there won't be any cutting there either. So just wanted to clarify that.
Roughly, if they sold that for residential, how many houses could go up there as a subdivision? Any guess?
portion of the property, I believe, is zone half acre, and the rest is zone acre.
Yeah, because over near Coffin, it's on half acre, and then it
Yeah.
goes down the road.
So, I mean, obviously, it depends. I mean, someone could go in there for an open space development, and that way they could avoid
Like
the,
they're doing down behind the Legion.
and then you're dealing with, one septic system, and, so, that would,
Reduce frontage.
well, not so much reduce frontages as much
The
as.
open space, they get
You know,
reduced
it's,
frontage,
yeah,
they have
the
more
same,
open space.
yeah. So, I mean, it depends. I mean, if you try to put a standard subdivision in there, you run into problems because of slopes and putting a septic system on each individual lot. So it would be more difficult, but it would lend itself to an open space development.
Question?
Come on up.
May I just clarify on the last point? Now I'm speaking as a member of the Open Space Committee. When this property first came on the market, because it's one of our important priority parcels, we partnered with Greenbelt to do an appraisal. And my understanding was that the best case scenario, taking in account the topography and the wetlands, was 8 to 16 houses. But 16 in my mind seems a little high. I would have to refresh my memory on the actual, but 8 seems to stand out as a strong number. But I don't think it was more than 16 anyway.
Good evening. My name is Don Doak. I live at 14 Cortland Lane, which is the house 190 feet from the zone. So that's where I live. And wanted to share with you all our perspective, and mine specifically being right there, is that, as others said, the gentleman has been there 6 years. When I bought 15 years ago, it was in the good faith of the zoning that was zoned like light residential. So certainly we looked at that, said, okay, this works, makes sense. It's beautiful open fields, obviously, right now. This is a power plant. So when people use farm, it's not a farm, it's a power plant. It's going to be connected and it's going to transmit power, obviously. And when you look at other properties, there hasn't been any look at other properties in this area anywhere else by SWEB. There's been no site search. This was developed because this seller wanted to sell their land. I'm all for them selling their land, obviously, but to be a commercial power plant versus some other use, what is originally zoned for, or open space, certainly goes against the reasons that I moved to the town and have been there 15 years, obviously, investing into the town. There's been no site search. Also, I've asked on a number of occasions for a pro forma. And Michael still hasn't provided a pro forma, although at the Concom, he shared, you know what, I probably could have had it for you a couple weeks ago. He kept saying no. So what we got instead was we got the public financial records. That's not a pro forma on this project. And that's what we've been looking for, to see the financials, certainly, of the project. So I can share with you that people across the street, all of them across the street, the D'Amatos, Wes and Ken D'Amato, people next to that.
I would actually prefer you don't speak for anybody else.
Okay, they asked me to, I'm sorry.
Okay, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? I don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think
So
It's second, it's
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
secondhand,
And-
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
not saying that you would
Yeah,
say
yeah.
something that, and then I just don't, in these type of circumstances.
No problem.
You know what I
No
mean?
problem. No, and we're formulating something
But
so
I
you all
understand. I
have a
get it.
formal, yeah, of that and the concerns. It is a very soft real estate market right now in West Newbury, as you probably know. You can look at people 2 houses down from me, 3. Well, ask Dr. Guy Navarra and those people who have tried to sell on my block. So
It
this
depends on what the
doesn't
price
help.
is at.
Yeah,
If your house is the price at a certain niche, they're flying.
yeah.
It depends on what.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
So, yeah, so from our perspective,
If-
living
if-
there.
If they could have sold
Yeah.
it for a 20-person.
Okay, we're kind of getting off the subject.
Yeah, but that's not, that's not our, certainly, the seller, who they sell it to, matters just in the overlay zoning for us.
So your big concern is that you're taking a residential.
Property, yeah.
Residential, and you're changing the zoning into basically industrial, and you're putting a power plant in it, in what you, I got it.
Correct.
That's your, out of the whole subject.
No, that's absolutely, yeah, thank you.
65 Coffin Street. I have the lowest point on the street.
Do you ever have fish on your street?
Not yet, but I suspect in the next few years I will.
But yeah, never mind. No. It's a joke from the pond that used to be up there that used to have fish in it. Never mind. Okay? It's a joke. Some people in the neighborhood got it. Never mind. I'm sorry.
I've only been here about 20 years, so didn't get it. The profile of the town is something that concerns me. We're all here because of its profile, I think. There may be a few people in town that have to live here, but for those that don't have to live here, we're here because of the town. I was first here in 1978, and I almost died in the town from a heart attack at a very young age. And after living here for a year and seeing how the people treated me during that 1 year period, knowing of my problem and my children, et cetera, I said I would come back someday. And I did. 1998, I came back because I like the town. And I think the town's planning committee is missing the boat here a little bit. And that is, we ought to have a plan. If we want a commercial district in this town, we ought to define what that commercial district is going to be. It just bothers the hell out of me that we're taking the sprinkler effect. That is, if we go with something like that, we're going to be sprinkling commercial properties around town. To me, that doesn't make any sense. The district that you're proposing to put in is a neighborhood, okay? It is not a commercial district. It is not like the community power plant up the street at the Page Hill. There's quite a significant difference between the two areas. Another thing is, Michael, you've said you're working with us. Fine. And I think you are willing to work with us. But the fact of the matter is, most of us, not all of us, but most of us are opposed to this project, okay? And I don't think that I've heard anything yet that would even begin to get me to change my mind.
Well, let's have an understanding. This gentleman works for a company that
No,
wants to put something
I understand.
in, and he's working with people as best as he can. The end result is that he's being paid to put a solar farm there.
Yeah, Glenn, I can't talk to the CEO of the company. I used to be a CEO of the company, and how many people get in to see me? Everybody kept them away, okay? They keep them away.
I understand.
You know, I know all about it, but the thing is, Michael, right from the beginning of this, we have been attending meetings, and one of the things that have bothered me all along, I'm a numbers person. I have been since I was 8 years old. I remember numbers. It's disgusting how I remember numbers, okay? But it hasn't been consistent. The numbers that we've heard thrown around haven't been consistent.
For
Okay?
what, sir? Well, that makes no
For example, how many trees are we going to tear down? How much acreage are we going to clear?
But then I'll be the devil's advocate. I'm not saying I'm for this, but I'll be the devil's advocate. That number keeps on moving is because he's trying to work with the neighborhood.
I don't think.
But no. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm being the devil's advocate.
Right.
And then somebody asks for a pro forma. You ask for a pro forma, then I would say it's pretty hard for me to give you a pro forma because I don't know the contract with National Grid yet. I don't know exactly what we have to do to the site. So it's very hard what my fixed costs are going to be, then be able to amortize all those over X amount of time and be able to get it, what the amount of money that's going to be coming into National Grid to
I'm not even
offset that.
thinking about
But
it.
you know what I'm saying? So,
No, I'm an accountant.
yeah. But you know what?
It doesn't mean anything to me at this point.
Okay.
What we're talking about here is generalities, not specifics, okay?
Okay.
But the thing is, the numbers have been inconsistent between you and the other presenter, I think it was, okay? There have been some inconsistent numbers. This bothers me because it sometimes leaves me with the feeling, are we getting the whole story here? And I know the whole story is a moving picture, but it would be nice from this point on that those numbers be coordinated. Number two issue that we'd like to bring to your attention is that it's like Chinese water torture with this project. In other words, you don't want to let out too much information, one of the reasons of which is you don't know, okay? You don't know what it's going to be. But on the other side of the coin, it's, you know, you're asking a lot of the people of this town to vote on something that really isn't well documented at this stage of the game. and probably
Can I
won't
stop
be.
you there for one right now? I mean, you showed us, because that's a very good point, right? So you showed, what else could be different? I mean, basically you showed us the solar panels are gonna be in this particular place. The overlay district is gonna be that. The fence is gonna be there. We're gonna have some type of house or something there, aren't we? Or a transfer station or a shack or? Okay, and then there's gonna be a line that's gonna go to a thing, or it's gonna come out here and go to Coffin Street. I mean, how could that change?
That's what we are asking, I guess. And to answer your question, apologies if there's been any inconsistency. It has been a bit of a moving target, but we are
Yes.
zeroing in, and now that we have a draft article, I think we will be more cohesive. Apologies if it hasn't been. And to answer this question, yeah, we are taking on some risk here. Actually, our intention is to take on more risk than we do in a usual project. To have our entire development area limited to this small area. There's only, when you take out the 50-foot buffer, there's only about 14, 15 acres left here. And we will have to work within that. Concom will have to allow us to get close enough to wetlands. The geotech analysis will have to go smoothly. So there is a lot of risk, and that's on our end to stay within that silhouette, which we will have to do.
Or it doesn't work.
Yeah. In which case, we don't do the project.
So that, to your question, sir, or your statement, I was under the impression that this is it, and it's pretty well defined of where it's going to be and what it's going to look like, because that's what you're telling us. If that thing changes, then that's horrible. You know what I mean? You can't do that to anyone. So that's what it is. Maybe it was different before, but.
Yeah, it was different before, and what we'd like to propose for the vote is this. So we wouldn't be able to change it after this was voted on and approved. That would be the overlay district, and we would have to work within that.
And then at a future site, that's the overlay district, and whomever comes before you and says the geo people or whatever, and say, there's no way we can do it because the wetlands aren't, they were tagged differently, and they come into there, and we can't go down, and there's bedrock, we can't secure, so I don't even know.
Yeah.
And then when we can't do it, that doesn't change, you go away.
Exactly.
Or you propose a new overlay district, when you have to go through the whole process again.
Exactly, and that's the risk that we're taking on. Our hands will be tied to only this area.
Okay.
And
Just one other point, if you don't mind. Take about a minute, okay? And I won't read it verbatim, but today I received a piece of paper from one of our neighbors that talked about, I believe, the SMART program and some of the Q&A that they have issued with the documentation that they've sent out. And it refers to Q&A for ground-mounted solar systems. And this was provided to me this afternoon by Frank Viteri, a neighbor on Coffin Street. Use of the land for purpose of solar power generation should be compatible with most other types of land usage. DOER, D-O-E-R, you're familiar with DOER, strongly discourages designating locations that require significant tree cutting because of the importance of water management, which I'm most concerned about on the street because I got the low point and it comes down on me from all directions. Costing and climate benefits that the trees provide. I assume they absorb water. I'm an accountant, I'm not a tree man, but I assume trees absorb a lot of water. DOER encourages locations in industrial areas and commercial districts. And I do too. As a matter of fact, I ride around every once in a while. My wife will accuse me of taking joyrides, but I ride around with a purpose. I like to see what's going on in my extended neighborhood. So I ride around the towns that are contiguous with ours, and I see their solar panel systems. I would have to say 90% of them are in what I would call commercial areas. They're not surrounded by houses of any sort. cheap houses, expensive houses, $2 million houses, $300,000, they're not surrounded by those. The place up the street, the community electric panel system is, again, it's not surrounded by houses. It's on the side of a hill. It's got wonderful drainage right down into the pool. And that pool, of course, comes down onto my property ultimately. But they are encouraging you to go to a commercial district. Why don't you do that? Why doesn't your CEO consider going to a commercial district? And as I mentioned to you the last time we talked, I'm in the business of, I had been in the business of cell towers. So I know the rates of return that are achieved on these types of projects, and I look at your project as one being very similar. Why don't you go to the neighborhood that wants you, the commercial district? That's all I have to say.
That land might be more expensive.
And cuts your rate of return from 40% to 30.
There you go.
Thank you.
I am Frank Viteri, previously quoted. I live at 54 Coffin Street. I've lived there with my wife and 4 children for 35 years. I've seen that land go from, I saw it abused by the previous owner, who basically reduced the value of that property significantly by his unpermitted and illegal acts. So what's remaining, as you pointed out, is 20 or 25 acres of reasonable land, which just happens to be within 200 feet of probably most of the people in this room. It's within 200 feet of my house also. I would just speak to the size of the project. We're dealing with something that is probably 10 times larger than what's on Pipestave Hill. We're dealing with 12 to 15,000 panels alone, 4x6 panels. I think you could see from that drawing that the area of clear cutting of trees is probably about 60 to 70% of the total property. So there will be a significant altering of the land. This property is on the side of Long Hill. It all drains to Coffin Street. We are now putting in 5-7 acres of impervious panels on here. This is a major increase in the water flowing. You were worried about a hurricane blowing them down. I'm worried about the hurricane flooding out my house and every house on Coffin Street. The problem with this process is that no engineering is done before the town votes on it. So you are being asked, and the town is being asked, to vote on vaporware. We have no idea what is. They put in a poorly written drainage report that I rebutted within a day. It didn't assume any imperviousness of the panels. So just looking at the unknowns that are going into such a large project so close to homes, where is all that water going? What is going to be the impact on the residential neighborhood? These are questions that are not, there's no engineering. We're looking at computer-drawn cartoon figures here. There's no survey. You're being asked to put out an overlay, and there's no meets and bounds survey. This is just a sketch. I know there's no points in the ground showing where these places are. I mean, it's vaporware. So, I mean, I think that I can't change that process, but.
We can go on. I think we understand.
Okay.
I'm not trying to cut you off, but I
Nope,
think.
that's fine. Everybody made good
If
points.
any other person, we've been on it for a long time. I don't want to keep on belaboring the point. Is there any more? Any more?
Anybody with something that we haven't talked about yet?
Okay, so Mike, what do we have to do? If we vote no on this, what happens? You told me what happens. We don't have to approve this tonight, right? We can put it, say it again? Yeah, thank you. We can put it under advisement, or we can say no. We at no time in this current condition are going to pass this on to anyone. We can do that too, right?
With the current person who asked for it, yes.
Yeah.
Because they're not living.
All I can do is deal with what I'm dealing with tonight. So I personally, okay, now after hearing everything, so the thing that as selectmen, the thing that I don't like when people complain is when they buy a house next to the ball field, and then they complain that the kids are playing baseball there. Okay? And the kids are on Sundays are playing soccer. Basketball too. Well, the basketball courts are new, so those people had it right.
Don't go there, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I have a problem with them, and I tell them that. I say, you know, you bought it there, we didn't change anything in your neighborhood and stuff like that. I live on the back, Knapp's Farm is doing, test holes for septic systems. Do I want them, that's my backyard looking out at my beautiful vistas. They have every right because nobody's changing any zoning to put a few homes up there. I knew that when I bought my house, that potentially, I love the way it looks and how it is, potentially there could be homes up there. I did that when I bought my house. I have a major problem with changing the zoning to this size of an industrial farm in a residential neighborhood. And I would ask this board and this cousin forum and this cousin person to vote no on this. It might have to come back to us, and we might not have any say in this, but I think we need to make a statement that, that I would vote no on this request.
Further discussion?
You made a good presentation. I understand you're here and you're getting paid by somebody, sir, but I'm just sorry. It's nothing personal about you or your presentation. You answered my questions and you stood up there and you took them, and I thank you for that. But I'm sorry that I have to vote no on this because of the reasons why I said.
One last, so just wondering how best to proceed. Now, my understanding with,
I charge $250 an hour for that information.
So many of these questions are questions for the planning board and for Concom that we teased out in their processes.
Well,
So,
it's not going there.
okay.
We just stopped it. And you probably should have understood what happened first to come to us, so your company, it's a learning lesson for everybody. Should have come to us first because we're not letting it go there. So it ends here. Under the present way it's happening, it ends here. You can't go to anybody else.
What changes could be made to change the board's mind? I mean, it sounds like there's...
Honestly, nothing. Nothing. I don't want that stuff, because again, whomever said it, the economies of scale become ridiculous that you're not going to do it. You know what I mean?
Okay, Glenn, let's.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm being respectful.
Okay. All in favor of Glenn's motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. No, thank you. You do better than most up there answering the questions, and you do, honestly, sir. You did a very good job, but it's not going to happen.
Okay, let's go back.
Are we going over these line by line, or what do you want to do?
Well, no, not every single line, but I have questions about individual.
What if I use the time? Just ask them the questions, keep on going.
Okay.
I'm actually hoping to go there. Let's have a workshop. Yeah, well, no, I think that he's allowed to propose something to go and vote, so, yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
I just in looking at the through December 31st expenditures of this year's budget, nothing really hit me except there were several special warrant items, special town meeting items from past years that seemed to not be expended. There were no line items or regular budget items that I actually had a problem with. But, for example, there is on the first page of this, there's a special town meeting, October of 16, 39,000 was appropriated for repairs to the apartment building, and it appears that none of that has been encumbered or expended in a year and a half now. That's $39,000 that's just sitting there. That's unusual. There's another one, Andy, perhaps you know about this one under the finance department. There's $45K for software. Is that has that not been used, or has, or what?
That has not been used, but it's to fix the chart of accounts, and that's one of the goals the selectmen has given to the finance department, which will be Laura. And we have met with one of the vendors that we're currently using about switching over to that, because the current accounting system we have has been acquired by another company, and then acquired by another company, and we also acquired 2 other software companies, and they're not going to support
anymore?
They're not going to support all 3 of them.
So they're gonna get it.
Yeah, you said we had to wait, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you telling us that a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will be used.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got plenty. Same kinds of items. Under the DPW department, on page 5, we have April of 2016 special town meeting appropriation of $30,000 for the trim on the library. I don't know if anything has been done with that. None of it's been spent yet. That's coming up on 2 years on that. That's
I'll check with Gary on that.
That's $30,000 there. On there's same time frame, special town meeting, April of 16. There's 54,000 left on roads repair and improvements, so that's a nice chunk of change.
I think you're identifying something here, actually, this trend.
Oh, okay, maybe I am. We have
You're on 5, right?
page 5.
The DPW page.
Under the special town meeting, April of 16, there is 80,000 was appropriated for repairs to the Page School. To date, 13,000 of that has been spent, and so there's a balance of 67,000. I believe to give that one, that may be ongoing, and that perhaps that isn't asked for a reappropriation until that gets used up. But the point is, there's still 67,000.
But you never know what's gonna, you never know. You never know.
Exactly, but it's just in the back of our minds. Let's remember that is there. There was one for another one. This one is now on page 6 under the community center. The town had an annual town meeting appropriation of well, it seems like there were 2, and basically $11,000 for the community center is still sitting there. My final note is under the Under the library department, this was the only item I had a concern with, is that the library expenses,
Give me the page, please.
page 6, almost at the very bottom.
Got it.
This was the only item, actually, in the whole budget that I was concerned that maybe we might run short on this fiscal year, is that library expenses had been spent to over 80%, and we're only halfway through the year.
I think that's the same thing that came up last year, and it's the periodicals and so forth and so on. There's like a lot of one-time expenses.
You do them in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think
I
that.
believe it is, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's not like an expenses that you need that money for expenses through the year. I think they use that for that or something like that. There were a lot of expenses, but I could be wrong.
Okay, that's all I've got. It just seems that we just sort of have to remember that there are several annual and special appropriations, even from 2 years ago, that haven't been used at all.
Well, could they have been used and maybe documented in different lines because of all the stuff? You know what I mean? Or no?
I don't think that would be the case. I'll find out what's going on.
I don't think so. Like especially this one, like maybe we decide. Well, for example, the apartment building, the 39,000. Maybe we figured, okay, perhaps we're going to turn this over to a different management, different ownership. Maybe we won't spend the money, but we have to remember that we appropriated 39,000 for it and haven't spent it.
And if anybody wants to come in and explain it, have them do it, right?
Yeah. Mr. McCarron?
I believe the town voted to, authorize the board to transfer the Pipestave Apartments to the Housing Authority.
Correct.
And the Housing Authority is undergoing a capital assessment. And so I think the idea might be that there's the money to, the idea is they probably want us to do certain work before they turn it over, and there's the money to do it. But there's no sense in doing it until you have that completed.
It is what it is.
Anybody else have any comments about?
No.
Okay.
Are you anybody here for any specific? We take Adam Warner. Yeah, I see this young lady in the back. Yes.
Oh, that's good, Andy. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you paid school? Is that where
Oh, are you here for what?
I wanted to hear about Page School and if there was more information.
There is actually.
How long is this annual solar field thing gonna last? There's one of the FinCom people leaving.
I came because I saw it was on the agenda and I thought I might be able to
I-
add something to the conversation.
I was just going to ask if we could get some information on it rather than that. I didn't think we actually had any.
And there was a lot of things, Mike.
How
Mike,
about
can you
Andy
come
and
up
I
here?
talk in a different, at another time? Does that work for you, Andy? And then,
We want
yeah.
financials. We want, it's an annual kind of
No,
thing.
I have a spreadsheet that shows all the income and all the costs.
If you can do that, bring it to him because, but there are some upgrades and stuff or whatever, or it came up to my attention from somebody in the audience when the screening was being talked about, this other proposal, that that solar field had some proposed screening and so forth and so on in their proposal, and it doesn't seem like they've done it. They've only put that fence up there, now they're putting white signs up. Was there any screening that was involved in that initial thing?
No, just a fence.
Or is it one of these things during presentations, they say, hey, we can have screening, and like this guy was saying, and then all of a sudden it never made it through the.
I don't ever remember that.
I think I can add, well, Gene and I may have different recollections.
Yep.
My recollection-
Hold on, time out.
Okay.
The reason why, you need to use the microphone.
Okay.
That's it, because we get into this, then we forget.
Sure. Yep.
Well, he's done. There's no more. He's talking about screening and bushes. The financial stuff is going on.
Yeah. It's same project, different issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
They can
Sounds
work it
good,
out
Andy.
and present
Okay.
something.
So my recollection was that at a planning board meeting during site plan review, that there was discussion of screening and that the owner of the project, who, Amoresco, said that screening was not appropriate, and it kind of just moved on, and there was never any commitment to any screening.
Okay.
That's my recollection.
That's fine, it seems to be Mike's too.
Okay.
I mean, do you wanna talk to that? Because it's not in any of the paperwork or contracts, so we can't go back to it now. But we might wanna learn, we could learn from it.
I think maybe the issue is just what you said, Glenn, Jean Lambert, River Road, that the screening, as in this project we just entertained, the screening was proposed, and I definitely remember that. It may not have made it to the final thing. It was obviously, as Rick noted, knocked out along the way at some point. And I guess that bothers me because that was one of the reasons that I felt some tiny bit of comfort at having that major view shed in town desecrated. But now it's very ugly, unfortunately, and I'm for solar.
I would have to say I totally disagree. I think it's great that people see that we are actually putting our money where our mouth is, and we actually, I don't have a problem with it at all.
I actually agree with him totally on that. And this is probably the other issue, I mean, the other thing that was before is, as you know how I voted on that. But that, I think, was the appropriate place and use of that.
Well, I'm for solar, but not in that place.
But that's what
And
everyone says.
The shrubbery would have helped.
Everyone wants wind power. They just don't want to see any windmills. You can't have it both ways.
And that's why I asked that question. You know, how real it is. It's beautiful to have all those gorgeous trees, but that was a lot of money.
Yeah,
You know,
no, we were just talking, I understood there would be bushes in front.
Yep, thank you.
I'm upset that they're not.
Okay.
Well,
No, we
I
learned
never
from it.
saw that.
We learned.
I'll give you my recollection, is that there was,
Can we-
no,
We have a
just,
young lady who wants to go.
just
She wants to get
is
her
that,
kid ready to go to,
there was
Sweet Sixty.
there's presently along Main Street, all those bushes, and they proposed cutting only 2 or 3 of those trees. And that was gonna
okay.
provide, that was basically it.
Oh, okay.
That,
Okay, I understand. To go back on that other issue, I think reading through those, when we have to look at that, reading through those library minutes that I was reading through today.
We haven't got to that.
No. They're saying that a few things are being charged to different accounts.
Okay, let's, just for, I would ask that we take something out of order. We'll go to item 11, what's happening with the paid school. I can give you a couple of new things that.
Do you have any specific questions you want to have answered, or do you want us to hear what we have to say, and then,
I just wanted to hear what you have to say. We've been getting information from the school, and it's been
why don't you come on up, please?
So Glenn, I've got some new information that you may not have, either of you have heard. I got this from,
So, my daughter is a first grader
Okay.
at Page, Christine DiGiuseppe. And clearly there was the issue Monday night, Tuesday morning, pipes burst, water flooded, schools closed, they find mold, and now the kids are moved. And so I just wanted to know if there was more information.
yes, there is.
And then just if there was any more plans, because, I mean, they've scrambled and they've done a great job of scrambling, but being a parent, there's not, 6 weeks kind of timeline, and then some people say mold is an issue, other people say no, it was more water
Okay, why don't-
damage.
So, okay,
You know,
okay, okay, so, first off, why is it potentially taking 6 weeks? Hopefully, it's not going to be,
Right.
but the extent, if you walk around the building and if you know how much water was expended out there,
50,000 gallons.
so the pump puts out 1,000 gallons a minute, and it was on for 29 minutes. That doesn't mean there was 29,000 gallons, but it means there was a lot, thousands of gallons of water. And so the extent of water damage is enormous. Lots of drywall needs to be cut, and a lot of it has been done actually already. A lot of drying is going on, but all the drywall has to be cut up to a couple of feet, insulation removed, ceilings replaced, flooring is damaged. There's a huge amount of water damage. Okay, now to the issue of the mold. Finding the mold was actually an incidental finding in removing some cove base in one area near a boys' bathroom. There was a very small amount of mold, and it's about I've got the picture, but it's basically, I say it's about this big. So that was, let me finish.
But I want to talk about that specific thing about the mold.
Well, I'm going, okay.
What you meant. Okay, finish.
Yeah, let me finish. That was not the reason at all that it's going to take 6 weeks. It's strictly a construction issue. So when the mold was found, it had to be noted that yes, mold was found there. But we're talking about a building that's very, it's not a new building. The mold was underneath a piece of, vinyl cove base, if you know what that's like. So it's isolated underneath there, and was probably, don't quote me on this, but it could have been there for 20 years. There's having the bathroom cleaned around there, water could easily have got there, and it could have been sitting there encapsulated for a very long time. So the amount of time necessary to get the building back into shape is completely unrelated to the mold. And I'll get to another thing about the mold in a second. So a lot of things have to be done in order to get the building back up to shape. Electrical systems were damaged, all the insulation, construction. So all of this has to be done with building permits, and in reverse, the electrical systems have to be approved by the electrical inspector before it goes back on, before the building can be inhabitable again, you might say. Yeah, so this is like a big, you had a lot of...
No, I wasn't. I wanted to make sure she understood what cove base was, how it was encapsulated. That's what I was going to make sure.
So, I'm trying. It's hard.
What's the new thing you have?
So that's why it's going to take so long, because we're really doing a major construction project here.
I want to clarify, I'm not upset about the amount of time you guys are doing, you're having it done correctly. I just was curious because after it happened, clearly everybody had a different story.
Right, and we're trying to get the, okay, so even better information is we had air quality analysis carried out Friday, I believe it was Friday, and we have the results this afternoon. And essentially, there was, I have to have an expert to help me read all the different areas that were tested, but the take-home message is basically there were no detectable spores found in the air anywhere in the building, except for a little bit in the entranceway was the sort of the area that I guess you would say was above baseline. I really don't want to be quoted exactly on this because Gary brought it in like at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So but
you're concerned
that even less than we would, this is in a building that's really wet now. We're drying it out, but you would think it would be actually much worse, and it's very, very safe.
I think it's very important for everybody to understand exactly what Archie said, what happened up there.
Right.
Our Board of Health and our building inspector
Okay.
okay? But that would have meant that we had to do all, and then they brought that down to the superintendent, but the superintendent already made his mind out that it was going to be closed for a significant amount of time. That's exactly what happened, okay? Is it better that it's closed? Of course it is, because you're running into the age of the children, having construction people in there. We couldn't do construction during the work with Cory checks and so forth and so on.
Right.
So for everybody, right, it's better that it's closed. The reason why there were mixed messages, I'm not really sure about that, and I wish it didn't happen, because this turned into a mold problem, which that was the least significant part of the thing that we're dealing with. Absolutely. Mold clothing is the vinyl thing that's from the wall to the floor, and it coves out like that.
Right.
So when you can wash the floor, the water doesn't go underneath. That got wet because of the leak, and that came out, and the building inspector, excuse me, the Board of Health saw a little bit of mold, and it wasn't any farther down, and didn't need to inspect anymore because everything was encapsulated.
Right.
But you're talking about a leak. There was a window like this where it was open. It went on a pipe like that and burst it. And it was so powerful that it ate through a concrete floor up in there and then started going down to everywhere. And then came down, and it looked like Waterworld down the stairs. So the best thing for us to do was close it. And the worst thing that we did, and we learned from it, is there were too many missed messages, and that's not going to happen again.
Right.
Too many people were answering the questions. There should have been one voice.
And it was none of us. And we own and responsible for the building. We lease it to the district for $1 a year for them to run our elementary school. They are responsible for the contents of that building. So when the message in the Globe and in the articles started coming out of the district that it was a mold problem, and that's why, and that's what people were concentrating on. We took exception to that because we knew what the truth was, because our Board of Health agent told us differently.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So it's going to be better.
And we are hoping that it gets done faster than 6 weeks, but we don't want to give people unrealistic expectations, because when you see how much does water water doesn't just come down straight, it tracks all sideways everywhere. It's amazing.
I mean, with 3 classrooms with them all, there was it's everywhere. It's hard for me to do because my kids went there before the construction.
Right.
So now all the rooms are different, so it's hard for me to tell you which ones were. But it was everywhere. And then when you have wet, then you have to take the sheetrock and you have to cut it. You have to go with a moisture meter around the whole place, just cut it up, take it out, put it back in. So it's a lot better that the kids aren't there.
I totally agree. And I will say that it was a scramble, but today went perfect. So.
Well, that's good.
It's an adventure, exactly. So, thank you. I just wanted
Thank you for your
to
patience. That's what we want. We want to thank everybody that helped out, and we ask that the parents be patient. Everyone is doing their best.
Yeah, and excellent. We just wanted to clarify, because we wanted you to make sure that your kids, because we started hearing things, we want to make sure that it's not a mold problem. That's we got that air quality test done to make sure that we knew it, and we had to put fence line. And we're going to do that on the other end too, because when you start doing construction and stuff and moving things around, we're going to have that, and that will be all signed off on before any children come back into that building.
Perfect.
The statement that the kids were moved out in part because the concerns over mold is not.
I would say that's very inaccurate.
Very inaccurate.
I mean, this appeared in the Boston Globe, and say mold closed paid school. Like, I don't understand why.
If there hadn't been any water damage and that amount of mold was all that was there, we would not have closed the school. No.
As our Board of Health person said, does he agree? Does he go along? Not even agree. Does he go along with having the school closed for that period of time? Yes, he does. Was it necessary because of the mold? Absolutely not.
Because of the mold, but because of the construction.
Yes, but we still could have made it work.
And in terms of cost, it's all covered by insurance?
We have a $10,000 deductible.
You have a $10,000 deductible, and what about the school district? They're paying for some of it too?
Well,
we're
they're responsible for, say, the contents, like the chairs or whatever.
That was destroyed by the flood.
That's the school.
That was
We're
removed.
responsible for the building. We lease the building to them. They school our children, and they're responsible for any of the contents. So computers that would be in the main office, books and
That's all that.
That's all them.
And do you have any idea of the total cost for the?
No.
We do not, no.
It's too preliminary now because with a building like that and the destruction that happened and because it was water, that, you know, it's a little fluid at this point.
No pun intended.
Nathan Kelly spoke earlier tonight. I'm also a Page School parent. My son is in kindergarten, and I think that the reason that the mold came out as the reason is just that there was so much information that came out last week. And again, I come from a construction background in terms of my family, so I don't need extensive explanations beyond what you gentlemen have already given tonight. It makes sense to me why the school is closed for 6 weeks just because of the construction. It will go much more quickly without students there, certainly. But with the way that it was presented, it was this is damage that occurred, and then, oh, now that mold has been discovered, now we're closing it for 6 weeks. So in terms of the way that the information came out of the superintendent's office, from a parent's perspective, it seemed like the mold is what caused the extended closure, and that's where I pulled up the same headline on the Boston Globe sitting here tonight. That's where I think the Boston Globe went, and they took all the information that we were getting, the statements coming out of the superintendent's office, and then ran with that as a salacious headline, and then turned it into that. So
what we can do,
I wish they would have checked with our Board of Health.
yeah, that's why we had an emergency meeting on Friday. So that was not mentioned. So that's why we had an emergency meeting on Friday, because we realized the information being disseminated was wrong, and it was making people feel uncomfortable with having their kids up there. So we had an emergency meeting. Then with Board of Health, Gary, and us. Then we went down to the district office and presented what was going on, and that's why you got an updated thing that said that mold really wasn't the issue.
that was received by parents a Wednesday evening I believe when that.
No.
I know, I understand that. But in terms of when we were being told when it was going to be closed for 6 weeks, that was on Wednesday when that information came out.
But I'm
and then
saying, we only can work as fast as we. So
I get it.
this superintendent's done great things, but he resigned, he's retiring. So now that you're on the FinCom and wherever, maybe put a request into the school committee that we get our new superintendent who might have a better way of communicating that this doesn't happen again.
Okay, let's not. Come on, Glenn, let's.
You gonna write that?
No.
I think it was just a slight error in communication.
Glenn, I
don't
don't,
think
I wish you wouldn't go there.
publicly disparage the gentleman who's been in education for 38 years, but that's beside
I'm
the
not
point.
disparaging anybody, but I think that, I don't think it's a good idea to disseminate information.
Glenn, cut it off.
I think you realize how irritated we are about the whole situation, and we've learned.
Glenn.
Or me, you can quote me on it. You don't have to say we. And I hope we all learn from it. I feel like I'm sitting with my wife. You guys don't let me get wound up in it. That was probably, you and Mike did that. I'll give you a better call later.
Yeah.
I understand it's on TV, and so you know what? It's on TV. I'm sorry for saying that. That was inappropriate, and I wish I didn't say it. So could you take it out, please?
No, but I can put that in.
It's not what I meant. That would take it out of context.
Okay, and now Steve Bannon. No.
Yeah, taking everything back after he gets the book sold. He gets all the pre-sales, and now he's taking it all back.
Okay, now we're going to discuss some of our. Go ahead.
This assessment thing, can we take that off? I didn't see anything in the Pawtucket assessment.
You went out. We did it. It's all done. Don't worry about it. You talked about it. Was the special ed Oh, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, okay, that's.
Yeah, town, okay. So we interviewed 3 candidates over the last week, and now we want to discuss how we feel about these individuals. And I'd like to thank, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in the whole process, the citizens, the staff of the town, the people, especially the people on the search committee. I think everyone did a super job. I'm happy about that, and I think we came up with 3 very outstanding candidates for the position. And now, do we have any further comments about how we feel about the individuals that we met with last week?
What do you guys, how do you want to do this? I have no problem with discussing all 3. I looked over them, and I'd like, would you like, I have a nomination that I don't know how, I don't know how we've done this before, you know, sometimes we all do it, but, I mean, I wouldn't mind putting a name in for nomination, for discussion.
I think that in the past, it kind of depends on the candidates, that sometimes we had candidates that were really close. And first of all, I'd like to say, I think all 3 candidates were really good. I think we got 3 good candidates to talk to, so that's a good thing.
And they put a lot of effort into their presentation.
Yeah, I was impressed. So I was in my mind trying to rethink that quote that I said to Jen when Archie was speaking. So I'm not sure, and I don't take it back. I'm not sure. You probably did. I just want to say, this whole process, the 3 finalists that we got proved to me that the whole process, right from being here doing these focus groups, was a success. It showed that we, as selectmen, that the townspeople, that town meeting, that the focus group people, the selection committee, everybody did their job. And it enabled us to interview 3 excellent candidates. And it stinks that one person, I don't know if there's only one person that we can choose from. It does that. But I do have a person that I have in mind that I wouldn't mind doing that.
And so do I, but why you go first?
Okay. So if we do have different people, how do we want to handle that? Well, you know what? I'm gonna
Draw first.
yeah, if you don't mind. I'm gonna make a motion that we go into contract negotiations, the town manager's job with West Newbury, with Angus Jenkins.
Sorry. Discussion. Okay. So, I mean, I had the benefit of seeing the candidates previously, answer questions for 2 hours on a whole bunch of topics. I mean, we really
Hammered them.
I didn't want to use the word. But, you know, one candidate did seem like he was more rounded, more articulate, and forward-thinking. So the interviews last week just confirmed, to me at least, what I had previously seen when they went through that process.
And that person is.
So I would feel very comfortable with Angus Jennings because it's the same person.
Okay. Now, one thing, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Joe. I'm very happy that you kept your feelings to yourself during the process. You know what I mean? Because then I was able to, you had your analysis, the team had their analysis and brought them forward, and then we could see them fresh. You know, I think that was important for us. So it might have been hard for you not to say to us, hey, oh, I really like this one, I really like that one, or whatever. But I think the process was just terrific, complete. Of any process that I've undertaken as a selectman, I think this is the most comprehensive process, and I think it was important to do that because this is a really big change for West Newbury, and I'm glad that I was able to say that gentleman's name. I'm glad that he came in. I'm glad all 3 came in, but I really feel comfortable going forward with this gentleman and leading our town.
I would concur. I liked.
Oh, okay, good.
I liked a lot of the things that everybody had to say. Everyone had some great ideas about financial management of the town. A lot of people had, well, all the people had very good experience. I'm sure they could have, any of the three people could have done the job. I would have to say, like Mr. Jennings, the best in terms of his description of what he would do, sort of in terms of like developing operations manuals and just for lots of things that were, say done now by institutional memory. But as he said, sometimes people leave, sometimes people get sick or whatever, and then if things are not written down and things are not in an operations manual, then we don't have it. So I really liked his new ideas in terms of getting some professionalism in terms of just jobs that we consider the person does it and we don't think too much about it, but that person may not be, no person is in that job forever, and I just liked his answers to those questions. So that was an important thing for me, that he felt that way, and I think I would concur that he would be my top pick also.
Good, thank you. You never know how that's gonna go, and I'm ecstatic that you guys feel the same way.
And I would agree with Glenn. We had no idea how Joe had felt before
Or the committee.
or what the committee felt. The three people that we interviewed were completely new to us. We had no ideas.
If this makes you feel better too, the committee was unanimous with that ranking of the three people. The committee realizes their job is to eliminate people and to bring three or more forward, but we did rank them, and he's the first.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so
Call the vote?
I would make a motion to go with.
I made the
Oh,
motion.
you did. Oh,
Joe seconded.
okay, it has. Okay.
And this was for discussion.
All in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Do you have any questions, Jen, before we move on?
What's the next step?
Contract.
An executive session.
So we have to agree on terms.
So you've already checked references and all that stuff.
They wouldn't have,
The search committee did that.
yeah, they would, all that process happened before,
Yeah,
they wouldn't have gotten to the final without it.
Yeah, we said that. They went under the financial background check, search, everything.
All the reference checks were done.
That was before.
Before they,
Do it after, I didn't know we did.
yeah, the criminal with every background check you possibly do. Okay, let's go.
Selectmen minutes. I move to approve the selectmen minutes of November 29th, November 30th, December 4th, December 8th, December 11th, December 28th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a question. So the payroll and invoice warrants are next, before we move it, kind of ask a question.
Absolutely.
Mike, so the library apparently took a vote on
Library trustees.
Library trustees, sorry, on September 12th to award additional holidays to staff. Do they have the authority to do that? There's a town
Mike,
bylaw.
can you come on up?
There's a town bylaw with a personnel policy.
Right.
So can they override a town bylaw?
In my opinion, no. They are subject to the town bylaws and the personnel policy. And I would take the assertion that, giving holidays is a form of salary. The appointing of bodies, can propose salaries under our bylaw, but it does have to, eventually have the approval of the Board of Selectmen, so.
Okay, but can I make a clarification? Okay. Now, can I read the minutes of that? Because I don't think these minutes say that.
No, what does it say?
Okay, they say that, Susan proposed that we close in observance of Veterans Day on Saturday, November 11th. She also proposed closing at 5 o'clock on November 22nd for Thanksgiving and December 23rd and 26th for Christmas. All dates were unanimously approved. So Susan Babb does have the authority to close the library at that time.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay, they didn't vote to give additional holidays.
They
She
voted
voted.
to close. Good point.
Okay,
That's a good point.
they voted.
Very good distinction.
Yeah, they voted to close that, but now what we're finding out is that
They paid.
they voted to close that, and then they did not vote in here. I don't even know if they have the authority to do that, it sounds like they don't, to now, those people then got paid for not working. And so then that turns into additional quote-unquote holidays, I think, that Joe's paying for, which was approved by Susan Babb in the warrants. The Library of Trustees approves her salary, her warrant, pay warrant,
Right.
and then she approves that. So
Which is unfair to the rest.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure we had the, so they didn't, so.
Remember, this only applies to hourly workers,
Yes.
Correct.
because
That's what we're talking about.
salaried
Salaried
employees.
Salary employees,
That's what we're talking
yep.
Yeah, I mean, and the, with regarding Veterans Day is that, you know,
Veterans Day
everyone.
is already a town holiday. I don't know
Yes.
why they have to vote.
They don't have, no, they are entitled to that holiday.
Maybe.
Well, but see, but hold on for 1 second, please. We're closed, now, if Veterans Day was on a Monday, would they be closed?
They could be, yeah, sure.
Or they could be open.
Well, they could be open, but then, but they'd still be entitled to the holiday.
So my point being is, I wanna make a very big, I wanna make.
I don't understand your question,
I
Glenn.
wanna make a distinction here, that they have the right to
Open or
close when they wanna close.
That's
We
true.
don't,
That's
they can
right.
close, they can all of a sudden say, we're gonna close next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Because,
That's right.
because of that library trustees, we don't have control over that,
That's right.
because of the laws
And
that
that's
we.
fine.
Yep.
That's fine.
So that's what I'm trying to make a distinction with. So they could have even said,
Pay is
we're
pay-
open.
pay is
Now,
different.
now, hold on for 1 second. If they decided to open on Veterans Day, are we then subject to pay them time and a half?
We're not, well,
You don't
no.
agree with that?
The answer, we wouldn't be required to pay them time and a half, but we would be required to
Pay 'em.
compensate them for the holiday
Yep.
and compensate them for the hours they work.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So if they felt it, if they felt
Okay.
it, if they have it in their, yeah, I got it.
So, okay,
If they
fine.
had it in their budget and they want to do that, they can do that. But they can't pay people on non-policy holidays, just when they arbitrarily decide to close, they can't pay people for not working.
Well, only with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. They can propose that, and if you approve it, then it's okay.
Well, then it becomes policy. So what do we do with this? What do you suggest?
You can instruct the accountant, you know, I mean, not to pay those sums, and, you know.
I would instruct the accountant not to pay those sums. Make sure the Board of Library Trustees is notified that they can't do this any longer. And if they've done it, and I'm being told that they've done, from some correspondence that we have from the library to our accountant, is that this is how they've always done it. So now that we know this, do we go back and get the money
I
from
wouldn't.
the town?
I mean, I wouldn't do that.
No.
I'm just asking the question. I don't think we should either, but I want to make sure, are we obligated to do that? Because now we've paid money out to people that should not have been paid. And while other people in the town have not got that. So are we obligated to do that now that we're aware of it? Or do we just say, hey, listen, bygone, it's water under
I
the
think,
bridge?
again, you have the approval authority, so, I mean, you would have the authority to say that could be grandfathered. Again, because that's a proposal. Any department head could come to you and say, I want to pay my person this, and and with your approval, that's what happens.
As long as that approval doesn't make the budget in the black.
You could still give the approval, that'd still be subject to their budget limitation. That's a separate
I
issue.
understand. So there's two things there. So, and now, what happens if, for some strange reason, the Board of Library Trustees says that they do have the authority to do this? I understand that, but what if for some strange reason
The
they say
Board
they
of,
do?
the Board of Selectmen have the final say on approving a warrant. If they don't approve it, it's not approved. The money cannot be spent.
What's concerning to me is that our library director said that I don't see in any minutes that they voted on that. And she said they did vote on that. So we have to.
I'm thinking that the assumption was that by voting to close, that they're voting, for example, the day after Thanksgiving, they were voting to close that with the, I don't think they were closing it with the intention of the employee. I think it was knowing that the employees were going to get paid. It doesn't say that,
Again,
but that
so,
would be
I mean,
my thinking.
Just, in the sake of time, we need to do a contract negotiation.
Yeah, but let's take, I don't want to rush on anything. We
I
seem
don't
to
want
rush
to rush
on
either,
things.
but I mean, I think we have a closure on it now.
Yeah, so,
We're not gonna pay.
so we're not going to pay. and
I disagree with that. I don't think that a few hourly employees should be, they may need that money, and they didn't vote to close. Maybe they wanted to work on December 26th.
Well, they couldn't because their library.
I know,
library
but I don't
trustees
think
voted.
they should be punished for what the trustees may have incorrectly done.
So then we should, and if we want to be in fairness, then we should give that, everybody's pay through the whole town the same way.
No, I'd say it's a mistake that we inform the Board of Trustees that this can't ever happen again, and,
I don't agree with that.
well,
Archie.
okay.
What I would agree with is we don't go back and get the money retroactively.
What do you mean, we can't do,
Yes,
we're
you
not
can.
getting it retroactively
No,
because
no,
we
no.
haven't paid it yet.
No, I'm talking about the other stuff. So, past holidays. So the November one,
We did the same thing. What are you talking about?
but we approved it. They don't have the authority.
But you could approve it for the library.
We could approve it for the library.
But
So
we
I'd say-
did, didn't we?
I don't know. Well, whatever. I say, well, last year, whatever. I'm just saying that, it is what it is. They have to know what the policy is. And I'm sorry that.
Make a motion.
The payroll's already been processed, right?
No, well, yes, but.
You could just have to have them write a revised check. But do
Well,
available for
that's something we need to look into. If they're coming into for our approval, this is not your fault, but if something's coming into our approval and we have questions on it, and one of the things is, can't do anything about it because
No, it
I don't
can't.
want that to happen anymore.
They can.
Glenn,
She's right, but we can.
I mean, you have the balance with regard to the wage laws. I mean, you have an obligation to pay the wages within a certain, very limited period of time. And so that's why you're
Well,
faced
I
with that
wouldn't hold
sometimes.
all our other money.
No,
What
but I'm
about
saying,
this? What about this what about this, Archie?
No, we will pay them, we'll reissue a manual check.
No, I understand. What about this, Archie? Give them this check, because they might be looking forward to this money, and then take it out of the next.
I think you have to approve it one way or the other.
No, no.
I'm just giving an option. I'm saying it's a good one. Obviously, it wasn't. Okay, I make a motion that we do not pay.
The hourly wages for the library for December 26th and December, whatever the day.
23rd.
23rd.
23rd. Second.
What, December 23rd and 26th?
Yes, because, and the reason why, because they were unauthorized.
And to ask the accountant to reissue manual checks for employees.
To recalculate their wages.
Recalculate their wages.
And inform the library director and the library trustees individually that this practice has to stop.
Well, that'll come from the board. I said that should come from the board.
Yeah, that's what I'm just putting that in the motion.
Inform the library trustees, what?
Well,
We have to inform them.
yes, we do.
Okay, so I'm just saying, inform them that this was wrong, but how are we gonna handle it? Are the people just not gonna get their checks? We have to tell the individuals.
We have to tell them.
So we would ask, because since she is the department head and she's the one who unlawfully signed it and authorized it, so we need to tell her.
So did the trustees, though, too.
We don't know. You're assuming that they knew that.
Of course they knew that.
Well, it doesn't say that.
I know, but,
I understand.
yeah.
Well, how do you want to handle that?
That's fine, what you just said.
We have to inform her that it was done wrong, and she has to inform the employees that it was wrong.
Yep, I agree.
And she had no authority to do that.
So you're gonna have to see her?
You want me to see her?
Go down and talk to Susan about this?
I would honestly like it in an email, because I think this might be a contentious situation. I hope it's not, and I hope it's not, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and we just move on. That's what I hope it's gonna be. But I would prefer it in an email, and then if she has any questions about anything, she needs to come to a board meeting, our next board meeting here, and explain it to us, and we'll listen to her, not a back and forth with one, not back and forth with one selectman, that something might be said that shouldn't be said or misquoted.
So how would you like that written in the email? What wording did you want to use?
That the accountant, I mean, we can go through the whole thing, the accountant found a mistake. No. Well, I saw an email from the accountant today.
Response to a board member wrote it.
Oh, I'm sorry. A board member found a mistake in the payroll of some hourly workers at the library. Right? So far? What else did it say? And that board voted, we haven't taken a vote yet, but I think it's gonna go the way, to not pay those hourly employees for the 23rd of December and the 26th of December, because there was no authorization or by the board to be able to give those individuals extra holidays. Okay. And then if she has any questions, our next selectmen's meeting is on the 22nd, which is more welcome to show up.
Thank you.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yes. He doesn't want to get his library copy book. And I can't read, so.
I don't want to see the people who had nothing to do with it punished, and the other ones getting punished.
I don't care. I know it's happened before, so they've benefited a lot in the past, and so it's time to stop it.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I move to approve the balance of the payroll warrant.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So can I just clarify, Archie, what you would rather see is say, this was a mistake, let's pay it this time and go forward. Is that what it is?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
It's important to realize this has been going on. We just caught it. So these people have been benefiting from this, and it's, in the other towns, other employees have.
Talk about being fair. It's unfair to everybody in this building that they're getting extra holidays.
Yeah, that's how we're looking at it.
Did you approve the invoice one?
Yes. Joe motioned it. I seconded it.
And you didn't abstain from the payroll one?
Yes, I did abstain.
Okay, what do we have to follow?
The library.
We need to come up with item 7, we need to come up with questions and also questions from the public about recycling that we can
give to Paul, to Mello.
At the next meeting, so come up with questions for that. We want to get, from Andy and from Rick, they're going to,
Come together with numbers on our annual
put together a little.
solar field.
A little song and dance about the solar field, yes. Like to, what about my questions about the budget? What do we do about that?
Did Andy take them down? I would really like to know.
Okay, I got him.
I would say.
Okay. And then get some answers, because reading those minutes to the library, I think they're like some lines, you know what I mean? I use but not use.
Okay, say that's the only ones.
Okay. Future agenda? I do.
Okay.
I'd like to have a discussion in the near future, now that this whole process is almost coming to an end with the town manager. And one of the things that I had, and Mike had brought it up tonight too, is a good example of just ongoing things that there has not been resolution on. So we have a list for him, maybe just a brainstorming session of things one being new heart. You know what I mean? So when that kind of a housekeeping thing for us to do before this gentleman, hopefully we get into a contract.
I think we need to put that together and, over time, and then when we do it, then before he starts, then kind of look at it and prioritize it.
Yeah,
That's
see
the
how
first
much.
thing. Here's a list of 20 things.
Yeah, but just to give you an idea, hey, these are ongoing. We're not asking you to accomplish these. We just want you to know.
Yeah,
these things are happening. These have been happening for the last 5 years.
That's a good idea.
1 year, 2 years. So he's not like, oh yeah,
We'll no need to get new pens.
Yeah. If you can think of something too, Mike, stuff that you just don't, you know what I mean by that? All the contracts, hopefully, and another thing too on my thing is, have we heard anything back from the dispatchers about contracting? We need to have a section coming up soon because their contract ended. Yes, I'd like to talk about part of the budgeting process. I want to talk about graves, our cemeteries in town, and I want to talk about how we maintain them. I want to try to maybe get I know they're all privately owned. I want to talk to them. Maybe we can, they're all privately owned, but maybe we can get into an agreement that we get a line item that the town can maybe start taking care of some of the maintenance of our cemeteries and show the respect that's due. This is something that came up, a townsperson, Mike and I have had conversations over the last couple of years about this. Now a townsperson has come up to me too and asked me, and this individual would love to, spearhead this. But I want to have a conversation. I don't know how we can do it, and I don't even know if we can get into this budget cycle because it's a little bit more complex than just, these are all privately owned by trusts. They all think of the town cemeteries, but they're not. But they're all townspeople kind of volunteering, and we do pay some money out for the graves for the veterans, right?
The statute allows us to donate certain money for veterans' graves, which we do.
Where does the money come from plowing them? Okay, well, you guys do what you're doing. I'm just going to ask him. Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
No. Sorry.
No. We'll vote no.
I'm not saying that. Motion to reconvene back to executive session and chapter 38, section 21A2.
And then we come out of that meeting to adjourn.
Yes.
Aye. Aye.